mentioned before, unforgettable Rabbi Isaac Mintz. I'd like to start by just mentioning my own recollection and my connection a little bit with Rabbi Mintz, and an observation of his life and its relevance to tonight's topic. Rabbi Mintz was one of the first Lubavitcher Hasidim that I actually saw. I was a kid in Williamsburg, and I used to daven in a shul, Mincha, Shalom, and he was like a youth director. I never knew he was a Lubavitcher, but it was special in those days to have a young man with a beard, a full beard, and he would be there organizing the Shalom as well. That was my first recollection. Later, when I learned in Montreal, he was a bacher, but at the same time, he was deeply involved in chinuch. He basically created the Beis Rivka. As a bacher, he had the building. He took bachrim there one night to put up the mezuzahs, and he was a special person in chinuch then as well. And then, as we heard, he was the principal. And he took me, he insisted, he got his way to Gram Chalamoy and Sukkot when they had school in his school where he was a principal in Elizabeth, New Jersey. And I saw there what we heard about the tremendous hashpah he had on hundreds of people. At the same time, Rabbi Mintz and Salangi and Mrs. Mintz were parents who raised a family. And every one of their children that I know is an accomplished person, and at the same time, they are very diverse. They're all different, they're all unique, they're all special in something else, in a different way. And that really, what they call today differentiation in chinuch, is something which is important as a parent, to be able to recognize in each of our children what they need, to be able to give it to them, to be able to show it to them, that each one should be able to succeed in their own unique way, and at the same time, there's an underlying spirit and a highest and an energy which they got from their home. I want to also tell you another story before I start my lecture. A story which happened to me, and it will be relevant eventually to this whole theme, just like the introduction will. It happened about over a year, Sukkot time. It rained sometimes on Sukkot. It did this year quite a bit. And some people have a roof on their Sukkot, and some people don't. I'm a coward. I have a roof on the Sukkot. Most of my kids will never dream of having a roof on the sukkah, and they're almost waiting for the rain, almost looking forward to sitting there in the rain and eating. But in Chabad, the men certainly do not eat outside the sukkah, no matter how hard it's raining. You put a chair on the table. This year we had to put a table on the table. One night of sukkahs, we sat. I was Shabbos Chalamoy. I was with a daughter here in Manhattan. And there were just a few people in the sukkah, but it was wearing coats with hoods and eating under the table, but it was really meaningful. It's powerful. Now, somebody asked me a shayla a year ago. He said, Mela, we're the Lubavitcher Hasidim and we eat in the sukkah. But should we make a bracha leishim for sukkah or not? Can you call that really doing the mitzvah with joy? I didn't reply, it was an email, but Shmini Atzeres at night, we were visiting a daughter in England who lives in Ealing. There are shlichus in Ealing Synagogue, a United Synagogue Shul, and the walk from that shul to the house is about 30 minutes. And about 5 minutes after you leave the shul on the way home, you come to a place which is called Ealing Common. It's a grassland, like a park, type of thing which for centuries and centuries is designated to be grassland. People could do what they want over there. No one's allowed to build. No public buildings, nothing. Just it's probably about 3 blocks by 2 blocks, I would imagine. And it was pouring with rain. Gigosim. And I was wearing this coat with the hood, and it still felt like it's coming to me. And we hear it walking on the pathway, paved pathway, in Ealing Common. And suddenly I see on the side a group of about 6 or 7 men. They're standing around someone. They're wearing short trousers, t-shirts. It was chilly, it was cold, it was pouring. They're soaking wet. And there was somebody in the middle doing push-ups. Doing push-ups. And then that person steps back, and each of them gets down and starts doing the push-ups. So I said to my aide, I'm walking home with my son-in-law, I said, I gotta stay here. I said, this is crazy. I said, push-ups, you have to go on Ealing Common, it's raining like this. And I did something that they weren't so happy about. I stopped them for a second. I said, excuse me. I said, would you like to come to our house and do the push-ups in a nice, dry, wonderful room? So the man says to me, we're not just doing push-ups. We're jogging, we're running. This is our personal trainer. And we're here for 2 hours. We have a whole series of different events we have to do. And please let us get on with it. And I did. And I said, now I understand. When you're doing something which you are inspired about, which is important to you, which is meaningful to you, which you know why you're doing it in the first place, the rain is nothing. It's not that there's rain and I have to overcome. The focus is on what my goal is. That's my second Hakdama. Now I'll start with Dvar Malchus. It's a year of Hakel. And I want to tell you a couple of Dvar Torahs about Hakel, relevant to our theme, and a word from the Zohar and from the Rebbe of this week's sermon. The Rebbe asks in a Sikha in Shnas Hakel in 1966, in Tov Shel Zayin. The Torah says that the reason that they gathered all the people together is Laman, Yilmadu, Yishmu, that they should learn, that they should hear. And the Gemara asks the question, Yilmadu, Yishmu, those for the men and the women, to study the deep concepts that are being taught, to feel the experience. But why did they bring the children? Why did they take the time? And the Gemara answers, in order to give reward to the people who bring the children with them. So the Rebbe asks a question on that Gemara. Learning something is a deep, educational, intellectual, spiritual experience. It's something which is engaging to the mind. Especially when it comes to Hakel, where the Rambam says that it wasn't just hearing. It was experiencing Matan Torah, it was experiencing Sinai again. You heard like Kadosh Baruch Hu is giving the Torah now. So the Rebbe said, somebody comes to Hakel, an adult, and they're coming there to hear and to learn as if they're hearing from Hashem. What comparison can you give to say, I'll get reward for bringing the children? How does that fit in with the whole thing? Being there, that's the big thing. Why does the Gemara say that it's to give reward for bringing the children? And the Rebbe says that the Torah itself gives the answer. That the children who didn't see, those children should learn the Yoru es Hashem Kol HaYom. They should be God-fearing all their lives. all the day. And the Rebbe says that is the secret. Everything else that a person does is wonderful, it's important, it's basic, but at the end of the day, it's the motivating, it's the transmitting, it's the continuity, giving things to our children, bringing our children with. And tonight all the children are here with us, really, in a sense, because that's why we're here. To be able to take an inspiration and to share it with the next generation. The Rebbe also says about Hakel elsewhere in Toshem Ches. The Rebbe says that Hakel means to gather together all the various types of people that are in the nation. It also means to gather together all the different aspects that you are in each person, all the koiches hanefesh, all of a person's faculties, because normally we live in different compartments. We have a different inspiration when we're doing this, and certain times we switch off that whole identity and we have a different personality. Then sometimes you have another personality. Hakel says you should be one, echad. You should be engaged in all of the areas, but there should be an underlying theme that is motivating you, that is inspiring you, that makes you into one. And maybe we could say that you should be one in every, and your children should be able to see you as one, that you are a person who represents a certain value, a certain ideal, and wherever you are in it, this is the underlying theme of Hakel, the underlying theme which unifies you as a person, and that's the role model which they see. On Sedra 12, the Zohar says, "Vayigdalu hana'orim," the children grew up. And he describes the chinuch process of Avraham Avinu in the Zohar. It says, "Sitra de Avraham, Goram Loi," the side of Avraham caused them to grow up in the right way. Zuchusay, Siyaya Lahom, his zuchus, Avraham's merit, helped the children. V'hu hava mechanech loy, k'moshenama, itzava is bonam, is beis ha'yachram, etc. And the third thing is that Avraham himself was mechanech his children. And the Rebbe explains, after quoting his father, Rabbi Yitzchak, who explained the spheres that are involved, the Rebbe said it's telling us what the essence of chinuch is, what you can expect from your children. Sitra de Avraham means where Avraham was, essentially. He was born with something. The parent is born with certain faculties, with certain abilities, with certain nature, with certain ruchnistic level. That's what we are as people. Everybody is born with something. So the Rebbe said that's goram line, that causes, that can be not more than a cause. It's something in the background. It's not a direct influence. Zuchusa, the zuchus, the merits, the mitzvahs that Avraham did, not just what he was born with, but how he developed it for himself, siyayah. That helped them. It didn't just cause, but it actually helped his children in their own journey. But ultimately, the real thing which has an effect on our children is mechanech lo'oy, that he is personally, dedicatedly, the hismasrus is the word that Rebbe used, the dedication that Avraham had to his children, that is what really made them what they were. That's what gave Yitzchak Avinu, what Yitzchak Avinu was, and that's what each of us should take from this idea. So how do we take that to the youth, the children of 2015? Looking at the challenges that children face today. These challenges didn't exist 5 years ago. Forget about 15, 20, 30 years ago. Everyone can imagine the different things. Who ever heard of WhatsApp 5 years ago? Who heard of Uber 3 years ago? These are all different strands of challenges that are there, also opportunities that can be used for Kedusha. But our children are being brought up in a world of future shock where there are always new challenges. They're in that world, and the Rebbe says, because they are in a world where it's almost impossible to escape the infiltration of the outside, it proves that Hashem gives them the ability, through the koyach of the Yosef of our generation, the Rebbe of our generation, they have the ability to be able to rise above it. And I want to just touch upon two recipes. And I will elaborate on each of them. As I understand it, which the Rebbe mentioned in a Farbrengen, Yud Aleph Nissen, Tovshin Mem Beis, 1982. The way I understood that Farbrengen, the Rebbe was saying that a parent has the privilege and the obligation and the opportunity to be able to influence their children in the correct direction through two channels. One is the Higadatul Levincha. You should tell your children, talking to your children, communicating to your children, having a line of communication open from the youngest age. A parent once asked me, like it's 5 years old, I do talk, I don't talk. And everything's there that she needs. I said, if you talk to your child when she's 5, she may talk to you when she's 15 as well. You're getting into a certain relationship, talking about it. We'll come back to talking. And the second one is being a dugma chaya, being a role model, a personal example that we show our children. And I'd like to just elaborate on each of these two things. The idea of talking to your children, it means to recognize I'm talking to this specific child who's living in the year 2015. The light, the message, the Torah doesn't change. But the language, the approach, has to take into consideration to whom I'm speaking. The Torah says you have to speak to every child. The one which is giving you the greatest pleasure and the one which is giving you the greatest challenge. And you have to have the right words and the right approach to each of those people, to each of those sons and daughters that they need. In Hasidus it explains that there's an or and there's a keli. The or is the message, the thought or the emotion that you want to convey. And the keli is the language which you're going to use, the instrument, how you're going to express it. And there's an inverse proportionality between the two. Because the Rebbe Rashab explains in the Maimon that the stronger the or, the weaker the keli. The stronger the light, the weaker the vessel. The stronger the vessel, the weaker the light. Meaning that if you have a very powerful message that you're trying to convey, an emotion, you want to tell someone how much you love them, or how much you're angry at them, or how much you're scared of them, whatever it happens to be, if you say it too powerfully, or if you say the idea too deeply, the keli will not be a keli. Not that the child will hear 1/10 of it. They won't hear anything. The person you're talking to will lose you. So you have to take into consideration a language. You can smother somebody with love. You're trying to say how much you love them, but they feel very violated. Just from all that powerful order. On the other hand, if you take the keli into consideration too much, in other words, you're putting too much into whom you're speaking to, you can do it so much that you dilute the whole message. So there's this balance, which is a constant balance in our lives, making sure that we get the message through to our children, making sure that it's our children, each child in their individual way, and making sure that it's the right message. that we're giving it over. I saw a letter from the Rebbe recently, and somebody wrote that he had a very bad relationship with a child, with a daughter, because of her conduct. And the Rebbe writes, this is Tafshi Yud Ches. The Rebbe writes, you have to remember to rocheha dachi noyha, v'chol nisimisar Torah, the ways of the Torah and ways of pleasantness, and all of its byways, all of its pathways, nisimisar means the small path, not the big highway, are also shalom peace. So whatever you're doing has to be done in a way of pleasantness and a way of goodness and kindness. The Rebbe writes this in countless places. It's in Klal Echidus Ba'Gerocha of the Viddige Rebbe, B'noyam u'b'toykah. Pleasantly but firmly. But the Rebbe says over here another thing. He says this doesn't mean that you don't have to say no. And this doesn't mean that you don't have to let your daughter know that there are certain aspects of her behavior which you're not happy about. But you have to find a way, other ways, other than just having arguments and having negative experiences, find ways to be able to communicate and to share with your daughter what you're saying. On a practical level, part of the idea of speaking to your children means, if you go to a fabrein, or you go to a shir, a woman's fabrein, certainly men go all the rough time, when you come home to share, there's always something, one sentence you can say. It's part of the communication process between the generations. You're bringing your life into their life. It doesn't have to be a whole shir, a whole lecture, whatever subject it is. I heard something today. It was very nice, it was very interesting. Or the Rebbe, the teacher, had to give over a very complex idea, a very delicate idea, and they found somehow a nice way to say it. Somehow bring that into the conversation. Or today at the fabrein, in our home, we have a minute. You come back from a fabrein, you have to say at least one idea. One of our sons, different sons, some sons love to sit by fabreinis, and some are really bored. And they'd rather go home and read a nice book and wait for their father to come home. I want a son like that, like I guess everybody does at some stage. And he used to come to me at the fabrein, at the kiddush, Tati, I want to go home. And I'd say, sure. And he'd say, when? And I'd say, wait 20 minutes. That's what I did earlier. Then eventually, when he'd say when, I'd say, when you have one sentence you can tell over to mommy. When you get home, you can leave. I just wanted the person to know that a fabrein is a place where you're going to get an idea, and number two, it's something which is shared. Now our kids are all in other places, Baruch Hashem. So when we're home, occasionally it's even alone, we're with our orchim. Come back from shul, there's always going to be something that we heard at the fabrein. Something. That should be part of the whole ethos in the home. Part of the ethos in the home should be the mothers, when they light the candle and they've just worked so hard to bring in Shabbos, especially in the winter time, especially in the summertime in its own way, there's pressure because you're doing other things. And all you want is to light those candles, say your tefillah, and just be able to relax for a minute. And I want to say, use that, even if it's 5 minutes. Go relax 5, 10 minutes later, 15 minutes, however much you can afford, to bond with your daughters who are home, or little boys who are home. Sing a niggin together. Talk together. The idea of communication between the generations is an absolute must to be able to convey, to be able to let our children catch what we want them to catch. It's true. In order to do that, you have to work a little bit on yourself also. But that's a benefit. It's a win-win. A couple of notes that I wrote this afternoon. Yeah. Asking your children from the youngest age, not being too intrusive, but showing an interest, offering the interest, listening to what they say, showing that you care, turning off your cell phone for 2 hours after the children come home. Not using the fact that you're with those children is the most precious thing that can happen. There's nothing in the world that could be more important. The Rebbe once told me this a whole bracha. This was in the 1970s, about 40 years ago. Eyes were closed. I don't remember the whole bracha, but I remember the word that the Rebbe said. He said, "Und in the Kuda HaPnimis," this is Rebbe's talking to a person with various obligations, afflichas, and many different people that I was connected with. And the Rebbe said, "In the Kuda HaPnimis," the innermost point is that you should have Chassidish and Nachas from your children. He said in Yiddish, Chassidish Nachas from the Kinder, Koilel, Bonecho, Elu, Talmidim, Talmidim and Talmidois, Ushpoim and Ushpois, which includes also your male or female pupils and people who you're connected to. And over the years I thought often, what's the connection between the two? The Rebbe says, from your children, including the others. I believe that by putting ourselves into our children in a meaningful way, with a dedication, talking to them, showing them, we are helping everyone else that we're trying to give a Torah as well. Both directly and indirectly. They see something here about relationships. And not every child is going in the way that we want them to. That's part of life, it probably always was. I once had a former pupil who was already a mother then, now she's a grandmother already, Baruch Hashem. But she was reaching the age when her daughters were coming into high school. And she mentioned that a few of the girls there, that this, that, they have a little group in the recess times, and they do this, they do that. Rabbi Lew, could you give me a guarantee that my daughters won't go in that direction? And I was tempted to tell her, as history has proven right, I was tempted to tell her, I'm sure that her daughters would never be like that, because I just knew them, you could tell. And today they're adults, all of them, and they're very, very special. But I didn't tell her that. Instead, I told her the truth. I said, I have no guarantees. There are no guarantees of the challenges that your children will face. There are no rules. There's a story I read, I don't know, I saw it was in the Kfar Chabad, it must be true, I guess. It was a chinuch page. It had some person who worked in the educational ministry, the Torah aspect of it in Israel. He was in Yechidus and he told the Rebbe, I have here on this paper 10 klalim b'chinuch, 10 rules of chinuch. The Rebbe looked at it and he said, according to the story, there's an 11th rule. And the man says, what's the 11th rule? The Rebbe said, the 11th rule is, there are no rules. No rules. And so I said to this young lady, this mother, I said, I cannot give you a guarantee of what your children, because I've seen so many thousands of kids over the years, and there's no rule. You can see things are more likely, less likely, but guaranteed. I said, but I will give you a guarantee. I will give you a guarantee that if you have a line of communication open, a positive line of communication with your child, and you're showing the child a good example of what you believe in, what the Rebbe teaches us, what you stand for, I guarantee you that you will help that child to be able to work their way through those challenges on their journey, and how long it would take, for that is never a guarantee. This is what chinuch is. It's life, it's believing in people, working with them, being honest with them, communicating with them. That's the communication side, as I understand it. I never said, rule number one is communicating. And the second thing is being a living example to our children. How do you express that? We saw also a sichos of the Rebbe, the most beautiful sichos when the Rebbe speaks sometimes on Vav Tishma, about the Rebbe's mother, the Rebbe's Chana. I'm talking about a particular genre of sichos where the Rebbe is explaining how he learned, how he observed his mother's conduct. Nothing that his mother told him. How he saw the different aspects and how she coped with the pressures of being central in the heyday of the Rabbonis in Yekaterinoslav, in Dnipropetrovsk. How the big Rav, the big covet and everything else, how she handled that. And also when there were tremendous pressures, all the refugees 100 years ago in the middle of the First World War, and he said he noticed, he didn't say, my mother told me this, told me that. The Rebbe said, the Rebbe was then a young teenager, just a bar mitzvah boy. And he said, I noticed how my mother handled that crisis in such a wonderful way. The Rebbe's mother, Rebbe Chana, also writes in her memoirs that when her husband was arrested, the Rabbi Yitzchak was arrested, he left instructions to his wife. He realized everyone was hoping he'd just being called in for questioning to the police station. Somehow, Rabbi understood that he's not coming back so fast. And he said to his wife that when it comes Yutes Kislev, despite all of the anxiety and anguish or whatever you feel, make sure sheyishre b'bayis si'oyro v'simcha. Make sure that in the home you can feel the light and the joy of Yutes Kislev. That was the thing that he mentioned. The home should be different. In our family, I didn't see that, but when our kids were growing up, they knew Yutes Kislev, you eat in the Shabbos room. And there's candles lit on the table. And the kids hate kasha, so you have 1/4 of 1 grain of kasha. But you did. It's part of it, part of the experience. Part of it, I try to say Yutes Kislev, whatever the Yom HaPagana is, it's an opportunity. You could think of it as something, oh, I got to do something special now. I can't just do it. I can't just throw something on the table. It's an opportunity. It's gold. It's giving you a chance to teach your children an atmosphere. It's something which you can only communicate by your example. Other areas of showing a living example to our children is the shalom bayis between the parents. I recently had something with, it was not Chabad, but the child who was exposed to, parent playing games, being sarcastic or something, all in a friendly way. And I had to intervene and explain that the child will learn to respect its parent from the way the parent respects the other parent. Another thing is the kibbutz holim that we ourselves have. We respecting our own parents or their memory. Whatever situation there is, there's a respect. That's what the Torah requires. We had it in the Rambam just today. The person shows respect to their parents, and they will be shown respect as well. I heard from the Rebbe once, he said, the Torah says, honor your father and your mother in order that your life will be long. So the Rebbe said an interesting little twist. He said, honor your father and your mother because you're going to live a long life, and your own children are going to treat you like you treat your parents. So whatever you're doing now, you're giving the menu for the next generation. It's making the child feel where they belong, what they're supposed to be doing. Respecting, here's a much more difficult one. Respecting their teachers. Respecting the school. You want your child to have a mashpia, to appoint a mashpia. It's not an easy thing for kids today. In my experience, they have issues with confidentiality, with judgmentalism, who they can look up to. We don't have to add to that burden by showing a disrespect or saying, the teacher, he davens for 2 hours, I don't know what he can even think about. He doesn't even learn Chassidus. How does he know? So anything like that, Monol Islam. On the other hand, by saying it's your teacher, there's a story told by the Frierdiker Rebbe that when he was a little boy, he was learning by a chassid by the name of Reb Nissen, a great chassid from previous generations. And the Rebbe Rashab, who was his father, and the Lubavitcher Rebbe of the time, and totally immersed in Avodas HaKlal and Avodas Hashem, was going away for 1 week. And he felt that he'd like to bond with his son over that week. I want to go and take my son and become closer to him. He's a Ben Yochid. He needs the input, he's missing it. And he went to Reb Nissen, the teacher, even though he was still about it, he didn't send a note, we're going to be abroad for 3 days or for 10 days or whatever. He said, can I take my son away for a week? And Reb Nissen said, I'm afraid it's not a good idea. He refused. And the Rebbe Rashab said, if you say no, it's no. The story we know from the Frierdiker Rebbe, who says that he was, Frierdiker Rebbe himself, was vacillating between resentment of the teacher for taking him away from his father, and at the same time, the Frierdiker Rebbe, realizing that it's for the benefit of his learning in the long run. His father backed it, he himself buckled under and backed it, and he said, that week I learned better than many a week. There's another story, by the way, where Reb Nissen asked Rashab if he could, Rashab asked Reb Nissen if he could take his son for a week, and he said yes. He also knew it wasn't just somebody who was looking to have control. He felt at that moment that for his son's learning, the important thing is that the parent asked. The important thing is that the parent respected the teacher. The important thing is that the parent respected the system. And the same way, when you plan your holidays, your vacations, to take the school schedule into consideration. When it comes to an open day, to meet the teachers, whatever you call it, open school day, to, even if it's a little bit difficult, to come, to show your child that you care about that. These are things, you're not talking directly to your child. It's not only to find out where my child is holding, which is very important, but it's also sending a message to the child about priorities, about values. And everything that we do is telling the child what's a priority and what's a value in our life. I'll tell you a good story. It's not a Chabad story, but it's a good story. It's more capacity to be a Chabad story. It's about a Gera Rebbe, the Imreyelis. I lived about 150 years ago. And he had a chassid who was a very wealthy man, who was a banker by profession. And that banker was going on a business trip to Paris. And the Gerrer Rebbe called him in and said, I hear you're going to Paris on a trip. And he said, I am. I'd like a bracha. He said, sure. He said, but can I ask you for a favor? He said, sure, anything. Can you get me something from Paris? Anything. So the Imri Emes tells him, I hear there's a certain brand of cigars that they sell in Paris. They don't sell them anywhere else in Europe. Very exquisite, very good. Could you bring me back a box of those cigars? The chassid, the banker, is wondering what they ever want. But if they ever says it, it's as good as a command. He goes to Paris, he does his business, a few days he's there, gets on the train takes off, and he suddenly he realizes he forgot to get the cigars. He was beside himself. So the first stop of the train was going to be in Belgium, on the way to Poland. And he decided to get off in Belgium and to go visit a Jewish banker friend that he had over there and ask him, what can I do? My Rebbe told me to get these cigars. The banker says, I'm telling you now, I know cigars. I'm a connoisseur. There's a much better type of cigar they sell here in Belgium. Here's the name, get him these. These are even better than the ones that you ever want. So he gets them, gets back to Poland, back in the town of Ger, the village of Ger, whatever, goes into the Gerrer Rebbe, and he says, Rebbe, I brought you the cigars. I must admit, I forgot about it in Paris, but I got off the train in Belgium, and I was assured that these are even of better quality. So the Gerrer Rebbe tells him, do you think that I asked you for those cigars because I need a box of cigars? The reason I asked for the cigars is I wanted you to remember, even when you're in Paris, you should remember that you have a Rebbe. And you forgot. That's the story. And every person, including every parent, has a Rebbe in them. And everybody's got a Paris in them. We have all the different compartments of our life. Every person has the moment, Yom Kippur, you feel different. Shabbos is different. In a certain Makom Kodesh, you feel different. Certain places, well, in the company of certain people, you feel different. And then there's other aspects of our lives, the one we're talking, even permitted, no objection to them. And the story means that there should be a hakel within the person. Your children know that. They have no problem with you having a Paris in your life. But they might have a problem, whether they're conscious of it or not, of the fact that you're a different person with your Rebbe than with your Paris. To see a consistency, to show something, it means working on what the children are also understanding. They know we're not perfect, but at least they know this is what really is meaningful to me. So that they know I'm working on myself on this, so that in itself, by seeing it, I'm not talking about saying, you know how much I did this, I did that. By just sensing it in the atmosphere of the home, that child is given a tremendous gift. Not a guarantee, but it's given the gift to be able to draw upon a reservoir of resources within themselves when they have to work on themselves to overcome something which they want very much to do, but they know doesn't fit with the value system. Doesn't fit with what their own value system is. Because that is what they've been shown. That is what is meaningful in that home. So that rubs off and it has an effect on the child as well. In other words, what I like to say is we are a parent at all times. The whole word, nowadays you have classes on parenting. Parenting became a verb. It's something I do. It's not something that I am. And people talk about it. I asked someone about it. I didn't check it out, but somebody, so I'm not 100% sure, but someone told me that they Googled it, they did research, and they found out that the first instance of parenting being used as a verb was only in 1970. It's as recently as that. And what's the difference? The difference is, I'm a parent all the time, even when I'm not parenting. It's what I am. And that is what communicates itself. If I send mixed messages to my children, where I am. On the one hand, I'm doing this. On the other hand, I'm doing that, which is really inconsistent. Then we're sending a message. So those are the two areas which, as I understand from the Rebbe's Torah, especially that of Rebbe, communicate with your children. Find a language. Listen to them. Ask them. They're more important than anything else in the world. More important than the biggest gevir, the biggest bank manager, the biggest, whatever it is. Your child is the most important person in the world. And your child will reflect that communication. And being a living example. It's how we behave, even if it's just for the sake of your children. We're doing it in a way that what the Rebbe said in the Sikha there is that every child looks up to their parent and sees them as someone very, very special. And they say to themselves, if I'll be half of what my parent is, I'd be really great. So therefore, whatever you want to be, you've got to be double that. Whatever you want your child to be. There's a Sikha of the Rebbe, it's Shavuos, Tavshach Tes. It was printed and published in the Weekly Hezvadas a few months ago. Shavuos time, I think. And the Rebbe says, why did the Eibusher say, I decline the Ovos as guarantors for Torah. I decline the Nevi'im, and I accept Boneinu Orvim Ba'adeinu. I accept the children as the guarantors. And the Rebbe said a very powerful insight. He said, every person, we all have a Yetzer Hara. And we have our baggage, not only from our own Yetzer Hara, but things that happened to us or that we were exposed to, for whatever reason, things that we wished weren't there, but they're there. And they're part of us. And therefore, every person within themselves has their level of compromise. That's how I understand the Sikha. You can check the Sikha. But the Rebbe said, if you want to know what a person's values really, really are, you cannot always tell it from their own Yetzer Hara and their own lifestyle. It's from what they want and pray for their children. That's where they really are. The meaning is not true. That's where that's what they sincerely believe in. And it's that aspect of ourselves, that's the Rebbe in yourself, that we have to bring out. To show that to our children. That inner dedication that we want from our children, to bring that out from ourselves as an example, and they will respond. Just want to say a few words about informal education. Just recently, meaning within the last month, somebody told me, they're just worried about certain signals, preteen. And I said, do you ever talk with that kid? At the table, do you ever, I said, you ever play a game? You ever play ball, or play Monopoly, or play chess, whatever or their preference is. You ever, a board game? And this person, a big cousin, he said, are you kidding me? Honestly, this is what happened. Are you kidding me? I should play a board game with my kid. And I told him the story which I want to share with you. The Frierdiker Rebbe, in the lifetime of the Rebbe Rashab, not when he was a child, but when he was already a man in his 20s, and his children were growing. He had 3 daughters, as we know. And the Rebbe Rashab, in Russia, it's very frequent, people go to dacha, they go to country houses. In the summer, it's very, very hot. No air conditioning. And people, even today, they go away for 2 or 3 months even longer than here sometimes. And they set themselves up where they are. In the times of the 1970s and 80s, when I visited Russia with the communists, the Jewish families took advantage of that 3-month vacation. They would rent a big place, and a whole bunch of families with kids, and they would teach them. Every 2.5 months they had learning during that time. But here we're going back now about 105 years ago. 110 years ago. The Rebbe Rashab went with a whole entourage, went to Dasha. And the whole Lubavitch was going with. There was the Kshavim, all of the writings. There was all of the Kalal work. There was the Secretariat. The whole Lubavitch moved in various caravans, in various coaches, and went to Dacha for 2 months or however long it was. Everything was moved in. There was a minyan, obviously. And one of the people that went with was Reb Chonya Marozov. Reb Chonya Marozov, Reb Elchanan Doiv Marozov, was one of the biggest Hasidim of the Rebbe Rashab. And he also appointed him as a Chavrusa who learned one-on-one with the Frierdiker Rebbe. And he was also the Mazkir. He was the secretary of the Rebbe Rashab during that time. So he was there, and he also had a couple of young daughters. He had sons, we know, some who live here, Baruch Hashem, still Eirich Yomim, but he had also a couple of daughters. These daughters, I'm not here to talk about the daughters, talk about a story which happened. They were playing blind man's golf. You know how you play it? You put a blindfold, somebody's it, they get a blindfold around the eyes, and they have to count slowly to 20. And while they're counting, all the kids in the room have to find a hiding place. You're under the table, behind the chair, near the cupboard, whatever it is. And once they count 20, they walk around the room. When they say 20, everyone has to stop on their spot where they are. And the one who's it has to walk around, and the first person they touch becomes it. That's how it works. So they're playing this game. And somehow or another, one of the daughters, whatever, they decided to have play a little prank on this little Marozov girl who was maybe younger than the others. She was 5 and they were 6. And what they did was, she counted to 20, and as she was coming here, they started moving away from the place. So wherever she walked, she went up and down the room, and she couldn't hit anybody, she couldn't touch anybody. In the middle of all this, suddenly, the door opens, and in walks the Frierdiker Rebbe. And in a split second, he sized up the whole situation. And what he did was, he walked over to this little girl, this little Marozov girl, right near her, so she couldn't avoid touching him. And she touched him, and he said, okay, I'm it, give me the blindfold. But his daughters, the Rebbe's daughters, he talked about these Rebbetzins, even though they were 7 years old, they screamed, Tata, this is not for you. Tati, this is not for you. Pasnish, this is not for for their father. And Friedrich Rebbe said, and do you want that people should say that your father is a cheater? Chas v'shalom. He said, give me the blindfold. And the Friedrich Rebbe, just that second, putting on the blindfold. And the door opens up. And in walks Reb Chonya Morozov, who the Rebbe Rashab wanted to see the Friedrich Rebbe, so he sent his Rabbi, Reb Chonya, to call the Friedrich Rebbe. He gets him that second. So Reb Chonya says to the Friedrich Rebbe, the Tate sucht dir, und du spielst mit Kindern. Your father is looking for you. And you're playing with kids. The Friedrich Rebbe was unfazed. He said, the Tate sucht sein Kind, und ich suche meine Kinder. My father is looking for his child, and I'm looking for my children. They said this was not a Tzena Relish here. It wasn't learning a Maimah or a Sikha. It was a game. It's an opportunity to transmit chinuch, to transmit value, to transmit simcha. Simcha means feeling a sense of meaning in what you're doing. That communicates itself. Feeling for what you're doing. That's what you call simcha. We have to find a way, informally, to talk with our children, to be there for them. It's not always easy. And somebody told me, my kid comes to talk to me, but he always comes 11:15 at night to talk. I said, that's when kids who have issues that they have to sort out, that's when they come. That comes with the turf. You don't have to sit with him for 2 hours. You can do it. You can sit down for 5 minutes and get the gist and say, this is so beautiful what you're saying, or so important, or so serious, that I don't want to just do it now. I want to sit down, especially make a time that we're going to sit down for an hour and talk about it. But don't say, when you come to me 11 o'clock at night, the kid might have been sitting for 12 hours or for 12 days before they even came to say it. The idea of just being there for direct and indirect communication with our children. I think that's covering at least a few food for thought. Again, I just want no one to lose the tuna kudus of working and thinking of ways and means of communication, on the one hand, and being serious about what we do, even when nobody's looking. Even what you think you have locked away, nobody knows about it, they know about it, don't worry about it. They know about it, directly or indirectly. So the Eibusher should help that everyone should see a lot of nachas from their children, or everyone, even if someone who's not even childless. The children of the generation are all of our children. All of our children. We are the parents. We are the adults to transmit Shnach HaHakah, Kol HaYom to our children. And the Eibusher should help them. We should see this Galas of Mashiach Tzidkeinu very soon, and we should be able to come and say, this is what we did for our kids, and we had nachas.